Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. I'm sitting here with my very good friend, Louise Goffin. How are you?
I am good. I like your...
Oh yes, this, my daughter made both of these and they both say daddy.
I love them.
We've had 2 interviews. We've talked to you as an artist on both occasions.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to make this about Louise Goffin, the producer, because you produced an album which obviously has just been remixed by Steve Genowick in Atmos.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a million questions. And I was thinking the obvious questions are going to be, as an artist producing another artist, that's actually an advantage because you understand what it's like. And you've worked with lots of incredibly famous producers. So you're not going to be overwhelmed as much thinking, oh, how's this artist going to judge me as a producer? I mean, I'm sure that's part of it. But then, of course, there's the added bonus that the artist you're producing is also your mother.
It's double-edged. There's the, yes, she's my mother, so there's the biological aspect of it, but she's my mother in that she is Carole King, one of the best artists you can work with.
Sure.
So, yeah, she's tough in the sense that her sense of excellence with everything she does is at such a high level that, you know, I wasn't going to get away with anything because I was related to her. She was going to expect the best no matter what.
But you're like that as well. And I'm not just going to make an assumption that you got it from her. You're your own person. But what I mean is, like, were you able to understand it from that perspective? I'm always wondering with the biological thing. The mother thing is
we worked really well together.
You did?
People commented on it who, you know, hadn't seen us working together. People were constantly commenting that we worked really well together. And one of the reasons she thought I had some of the qualities of my dad and Lou Adler. Lou Adler is a quiet producer. He is not someone who comes in and says, all right, here's what we're going to do. He has this gentle way of facilitating and allowing Carole and the musicians to shine, and he'll listen, and you know he'll do his thing. Now I'm not comparing myself to Lou, but this is what she said. She said she felt like we worked really well together because I allowed her to do what she did. I made gentle suggestions. She gave me feedback on it, and we had a really good chemistry together. Also, I started the record before she got involved, really. And to me, you know, part of being a producer is putting the right team together, knowing the right musicians. You know, I don't have to tell you, you've done it many times. You know, finding the right people, the right gang for the artist, so to speak, so that they feel excited. I knew in the case with my mom that I had to get the cats, she calls the cats, because she gets really excited around them. She gets teenaged, you know, we're in the studio, and, you know, all of that. And she hadn't made a record in 10 years, you know. She hadn't been in the studio, and she even wasn't fully committed to this record at the beginning. And anyway, I had seen her play with James Taylor at the Troubadour. I saw that show. I think it was 2008. And I saw that Nathaniel Kunkel was working with Peter Asher recording the show. And I'd recently spoken to Russ Kunkel, who played drums on the record, as Nathaniel's dad. And he was telling me how impressed he was with Nathaniel. He just said, he's the smartest person I know. And, you know, I can't even keep up with him. And I hadn't really worked with Nathaniel, you know. So I gave him a call and I said, listen, you know, I've been asked to do this record. Are you available? Will you do it? And he said, sure. And then we went to the Village, and we didn't have my mom. We had to pick 4 songs to start, get a band together, figure out the keys. And then the only way I got her to do vocals at first was she came into town for my son's birthday. And I had to convince her to stay a couple days more to sing vocals. And she came into my studio and she'd sing some vocals. And it was really just how am I going to put together a record with someone who isn't really around and not in the studio singing full vocals? But the first 4 songs were the most difficult. And then we got them. And then they sounded amazing. And then everyone heard them, and she heard them, and she said, oh, I see what this can be. And then let's get our calendars together. And we're booking 5 weeks in the Village and Record One and getting the band. And then it felt like we were up and running, and it was a different vibe. It was really happening.
Did you go into the process thinking that if those first 4 songs weren't what they were supposed to be, that was going to be the end of it?
I didn't think it was going to be the end of it, but when they first came, she had a different manager. She was writing her biography, which I don't know how long she'd been working on it then. Maybe she'd already been working on it 4 years, 4 or 5 years. It was 7 years of writing. She was like, I don't really feel like being in the studio right now. I'm working on my memoir and I want to finish it. But you, Louise, you could run with it. You could drive it. At first I thought, I don't know if you want me to produce you, because I don't know that I'm going to make a very commercial record. Like, I think it would be really good to do left of center, 60s. It might sound like the Shags if I do it. And she goes, I just want you to do what you want to do. And then I went on a trip with my kids who were little at the time. We went back east. Actually, we stayed in this crazy place called Mohonk, which looks very like The Shining. It was like this big, old, very old place. Because I didn't want to do Christmas that year. I was like, I don't want to cook. I was a single mom at that point. I don't want to cook. I don't want to decorate. I just want everything done. So I went to this big place that I'd gone when I was 21, and with big Christmas trees and all that, dinners. And I had 2 kids in tow, and when they would sleep, I would just be listening to Christmas songs on iTunes, combing and looking for something new, looking for something that hadn't been done a gazillion times, and really not wanting to make it Christmas only, wanting to make it more wintry, holiday, inclusive, and then had the idea, well, my favorite things isn't a Christmas song, but it does feel the energy of winter and all of that. Sure. And there were things missing, which is why I ended up writing songs with some other co-writers for the record, because there were things that it was really hard to find a Latin Christmas song that I liked.
Often. Feliz Navidad.
Apart from that one, I think there was Jingle Bells, So George Noriega and Jody Mara and I did Christmas Paradise, which is a really funny lyric about snow cones in the sun and palm trees swaying. Mm-hmm. Out on the beach, Feliz Navidad is playing. Yeah, and went to write with Guy Chambers, our friend Guy Chambers. It's interesting, that lyric, it's almost like the lyric had been writing itself the entire record. So when I went to Guy's, it kind of came out like an egg. It's like, where did this lyric come from? And I think it was making the record. There was a part of me that thought, we need a New Year song. What would it say? It will be prayerful. It will be positive. It ended up sounding like something she would have written on the piano. But yeah, so it was great. And then Nico Bolas, there was one session I particularly remember, which was at Record One. I think we cut 3 songs that day. This Christmas, Every Day Will Be Like a Holiday. It was all live band on the floor. And she was there, and I know one of them was a song that Jody and I had written, because I remember she said she didn't want to sing it because Jody's vocal was so good on the demo. Yeah, we went in there, and I had been at Record One so many times, which now is somebody owns it. It's maybe a rap. I don't know what it is anymore.
I do know it's sort of, I don't know if it's long-term booked out or bought by somebody, but yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Nico came up there. It was Val Garay's studio.
Yeah.
And he used to be in the tape room there, and I would be there at the same time. I made my record, a record with Danny Korchmar there. So I was 20.
It was an identical copy of...
It's an Alan Side studio, or it became one, right?
Yeah, it's an identical copy of Sunset Sound's sister studio.
Sound Factory.
Sound Factory.
Where I also worked, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and George Massenberg designed that room, and Val Garay worked in it. And then I think Val Garay built...
Yeah, he built a copy of it, yeah. He told me. Him and Peter had made so many records in that room. They're like, well, let's just have our own room and make it be the same as this one so we don't have to...
I remember that. Yeah, and I worked in the Sound Factory with Danny Korchmar on my first record. I was sad when Sound Factory, went. So yeah, we were at Record One, and I remember being in the parking lot, pulling my car up and praying. I just thought, okay, I am going and producing a record with some serious cats who have, if you look at their discography, it's scroll like, and Nico is engineering, and my mother is there, and I said, I didn't even say, dear God, let me do a great job. I just said, dear God, let me not screw up. Yeah, so I walked in humbly, I walked in really wanting to do my best. Nico was so generous, as he is. He was great. That was the first moment I felt like I'm a producer. Up until that moment, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know quite what a producer does. But in that moment, when I was doing that session, I really felt like I made some decisions that made things better. And it had to do with paying attention. I heard Russ Kunkel say something about the tempo, but he didn't tell me, and he didn't tell Nico. But I heard him say something, and I was like, Russ, what are you saying? What's that about the tempo? He'd say, well, I think we could tick it up just one, okay, let's do that. And then my mother didn't want to sing. She's like, I don't want to sing. I don't feel like it. I'm like, these guys are here, let's get you in a room, and really pushed. And she sung the best vocals of the record that day because she got really excited with the band. And then there was something with the key, I could hear that she would be better with the key a half tone down. And that moment was really sweet because Nico, I was there and Nico was here, and he looked at me and he goes, Wheezy, you're a producer. And that was very, very nice.
And that was at Record One?
That day was at Record One. And then we later, we did a lot of it at the Village, most of it.
Which room at the Village?
The first one we did was in the room behind the front desk.
Oh, okay. The one with the Neve.
The Neve room. We did do some overdubs in, I believe they call it B. It's the one on the side on the hall. And then the main room we did a lot. We call it the Tusk room.
Yes, the big Fleetwood Mac room.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have spent so much time at the Village, I can't believe I don't even know the names of the studios. But I know where they are.
I do the same thing. We do the same thing at Sunset. I remember if it's 2 or 3, and we just call it the Prince room.
So we were there, and we did, I remember overdubbing Bob Glaub on New Year's Day there, because I think we cut it with piano and vocal, and then we got Bob in later. We did Christmas Paradise in the big room. And I remember we definitely put the horns on Every Day Will Be Like a Holiday and This Christmas, and Nico was there, because I remember him saying, we're going to do this Memphis style. We're going to put the mics out there and they're just going to blow. And they sound fantastic. They sound like that.
How long was this process? Because you're doing 4 days, and then there was some time off, and then you're in 2 other different studios.
I was trying to look at the dates. When we were looking at the drives, I was looking at the dates, trying to figure out when we started, when we mixed. Nathaniel and I think we started it third half of 2010, 2010, and got those tracks together. And then, Maybe it was later in 2010. Then in 2011, I think that's when she came out, and we did like 5 weeks in a row. It was fun too, because we went to this place called KMA, which is short for Kick My Ass, studios. But it was in the Brill Building. Unfortunately, the person whose studio was passed away.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I found that out recently. But we were there in the Brill Building, and it was crazy to be in the Brill Building.
That is crazy.
And then, adjoining it was Colony Records, so it was really fun to go through all the vinyl. And it's all gone now.
Is the Brill Building gone?
It's not the Brill Building anymore, and it's not Colony Records anymore. I mean, I don't know. It's probably a building,
right?
But I don't know what they're doing with it.
It's got to have obviously historical significance. They can't knock it down, can they? That would be.
I don't know what it is. I just know that it's not what it was.
Was that the last kind of music stuff that was being done there?
Well, it's interesting that there was a studio in there. I think there was still a couple of doors that had publishing names on it. But, my parents never worked at the Brill Building. That is, yeah, that is a fallacy. They worked at 1650 Broadway, around the corner.
Oh, wow.
That's where Alden Music was. Yeah.
So the Brill Building was just the administrative stuff, the publishers and stuff?
There were other publishers there, but I think somehow that Tin Pan Alley, thing started to be called Brill Building. And in fact, they teach it in music schools. And sometimes I talk to music students. I say, they never worked at the Brill Building. They go, what? I have to call my instructors and tell them. They're telling us the wrong information. 1650 Broadway, yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, we mixed it there. Nathaniel mixed it there. My mother came for that. It was really handy that he mixed everything in the box when it came to doing these mixes, the Atmos mixes.
Absolutely, yes. Because it made stemming out a lot easier.
It made it a lot easier, yeah.
So with Steve at the helm, another character, I suppose, like Nico, who's been involved in so many great records over so many decades.
And also, I will say, he also came to the Village to work on the Holiday record at one point. We were in the room that Concord owns, which is on the 3rd floor, and we spent some time in there doing stuff together. But back to you, yes.
No. I was just, obviously Steve is... talk about a logical choice with the resume, obviously having been Al's right-hand man for 20 plus years. So he had the right resume, but probably even more importantly, one of the pioneers of mixing in Atmos.
Absolutely. And Steve, it was just a delight working with Steve. And it was also a delight because I got to know Al a little bit in the last year of his life, mostly because when I was at Blackbird, he and Nico came to Blackbird, which was really a surprise to Nico. He's like, what? What are you doing in this class? Wait a minute. It was very confusing, kind of going backwards. But I stayed in touch with Al when I came back to LA. He was very sweet. He'd always be on my Facebook page and watching live streams and commenting. And then I did a podcast interview with him. And then he, wrote back and said, I didn't give you enough original stuff. I've told you stuff I've told a million people. I want to give you something special. And it was just like him to really want to make it special. Yeah, and he talked a lot about Steve and Nico. And it was so great to work with Steve 10 years later, and hear all the stories from a different perspective. And really, we'd sit in the kitchen during breaks and he'd talk about Al and Capitol Records and how Capitol Records treated their engineers almost like electricians used to be union, So he knew he had a great job there and he really he rose to the occasion and he really knows his stuff.
You're right. Steve has an ease about him. Mm-hmm. Nothing seems to be... There's no drama ever associated with the process. It's all just about how to get from A to B in the best possible way with the best results. Mm-hmm. It was fun, sitting back and watching you guys interact, And I felt like you were pretty darn natural in that situation. Did you feel like you had to was there any kind of hesitation had to reconnect with the music after this much time?
Not at all. When I heard things, I was delighted. I was like, oh, that's a really cool piano part. And, oh, I remember putting those chimes on. And this happens to me a lot with music. I always say, if you hear something in a mix, you know this. When you hear something in a mix that bugs you, it will always bug you. They say, oh, they'll talk you out of it. Oh, you're too close to it. And then you listen to it a week later and you go, that thing still bothers me that I didn't fix. Does that happen to you?
It does, but then there's also times where I haven't heard something in 10 years. And I remember I had a problem with the song, but I can't remember what it was.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's that because everything's changed. Like the whole, yeah.
I used to have a problem with this. What is it?
Right. And later, so much time goes by where it goes, well, it didn't matter anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They changed format. They don't even release on that format anymore. Yeah, but I find the opposite is true. When I really spend the extra time saying, a lot of times I'll listen to things less analytically, but more from, I feel like my job as a musician, arranger, producer, songwriter, my job is to let the music come through me. And if anything disturbs the feeling of wholesomeness, that it's kind of like the disbelief factor, is to zero in on what it is, and make it like nature, where you just go, And I did that a lot with the record, particularly at the end. You have such great musicians. You have Carole King. You have these songs. It's pretty great to begin with, but then when you're getting to closing things down, looking at the list, is there anything else we have to do on this list? Let me have a listen before we mix it and say this one's ready to mix. And it'd be something needs to happen here. So when I was doing the Atmos mixes with Steve, I was really pleased with all of those extra little things. Oh, that reverb piano at the end of Do You Hear What I Hear, where it got kind of jazzy and reverby. I remember doing that. Things like that really became meaningful. And also, he was sitting here. I say here, this would be a different studio, but here, and I was sitting there. But there were monitors behind, you couldn't see them. They were behind canvas, and so I'd look around. I go, my mom's in here. It'd be like she was singing right next to me. That was the crazy thing about being in that room, is it really felt like I was reliving, being in there in 3D. But yeah, it was great. It was a little bit like that time at Record One where I went, well, I don't know how to mix in Atmos. Like I don't know how to, if you left the controls with me, I wouldn't know what to do. So I felt, he's an expert. I'm going to let him do that. And that's not my job. My job is just to make sure musically that it keeps what it was supposed to be.
It's exciting, isn't it? Being able to separate some of that stuff out and be able to hear the detail back.
Yeah.
Especially you've got orchestral stuff, you've got brass, you've got strings, you've got guitars, you've got bass, you've got drums, you've got backgrounds, you've got a lot of information that's demanding your attention. And then suddenly it can be around you, it can be above you, it can be behind you. It's interesting though, because I want people to have that experience and be able to hear it that way, because explaining how Atmos sounds is really...
It's like dancing about architecture.
Yeah, it's about dancing about architecture, yeah.
Yeah. It's addicting. That's just the thing. Mm-hmm. It's addicting once things are placed in a room. I mean, this is something I learned recently. I guess I always knew this, but I never really found the words for it, that when you're recording sound, you're also recording air. You're not just recording sound. You're recording sound in a space. So you're also recording the space. And when you're mixing in Atmos, you're able to use the space for playback. Up until that, we've been able to record sound in space, but we had to place them somewhere between the two stereo speakers. And now we don't. So it just is this feeling of expansion, you know? I can kind of feel it here.
No, it's an amazing experience. But again, it's something you have to actually experience. It's kind of the perfect record to do it, though, because it has all that orchestration stuff. And I mean, really incredible playing. Like, I remember we were all marveling at like some of these Dean Parks riffs that were just like, oh, what a great guitar riff, and what a simple, incredible guitar tone that now you can hear like the vibrato on it. Like, it actually is like something that's tangible that you can pick up. It was the perfect record to do in this, or one of the perfect records, I should say, to do in this kind of environment, in Atmos.
It's good because also there's a tendency when there's new technology to have the technology lead. And this was a really great record to do where the musicality could lead the technology, which is, I think, how it should always be.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, we do have a course with Steve on this, where Steve actually talks about how he mixes in Atmos, and the song is This Christmas.
I love that. I'm really glad we have that track for people to download because it's a great track.
Yep, you can download it and mix it. There will be a link to Steve's course with Louise. So actually, and there's an interview of the two of you together talking about the process in there as well. And there's lots of filming of Steve and Louise working together on it as well. I'm not in it. I'm in the background. It's fun. I enjoy these kinds of things where I can just observe. And I learned a lot. There's something about that kind of, Al had it in abundance, the sort of East Coast guy transported to LA, because Jack's like that, and Jay Messina and Shelly Yakus, like these old school kind of New Yorkers that learned in those like really tough New York studios where it was like, they do these like 5-hour sessions and tear down and do another session. And then, and it was like that Steve sort of inherited, I think, from Al, that nothing is a problem. When you've grown up in those environments where they were working tight deadlines with incredible musicians, it installs a sort of sense of, confidence, I suppose.
Steve is so calm.
Mm-hmm.
He's really calm. It's great. It's a lovely thing to work with. And it's a calm confidence. People can be calm for the wrong reasons.
Yes, exactly.
They can be too calm where everything's going wrong, you know. But he's calm in the right way.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a lot of fun.
I'm very excited.
Thanks for driving all the way over to do this.
My pleasure.
So please check out the course below. There's a link down below. You're going to love it. I mean, it's incredible songs, incredible singer, incredible musician, incredible production, incredible mixing, incredible everything.
Thank you.
So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, tschüss, au revoir, sayonara, goodbye.